Cadian shock troops. Located at the edge of the Eye of Terror, Cadia was the cork in the throat of hell and the only thing standing between chaos and the rest of humanity. Children learned to use las guns before they learned to read. Teenagers fought mock wars in the wilderness as part of the youth armies. By the time a Cadian reached adulthood, soldiering was a way of life. This kind of discipline produced the most dependable infantry regiment in the entire Astra Militarum. Cadian tactics revolve around adaptable combined arms strategies and an officer corps that's trained to think on their feet rather than stick to a strict playbook. Their elite Casercan are selected from the finest recruits and undergo extra years of specialized training. Their doctrine favors generalist flexibility, using mobile mechanized infantry and chimera transport supported by heavy artillery and Lehman Russ battle tanks to adapt to shifting battlefield conditions. Whether they're digging in for a tough defense or launching an aggressive assault, their strength ultimately comes from their refusal to retreat. The slogan, "The planet broke before the Guard did," is personified by the Lord Castellan's final stand during the 13th Black Crusade. Even as Abaddon used the will of eternity to physically shatter Cadia and collapse the pylons, the Cadian 8th remained at their posts. Ursarkar E. Creed's leadership turned a planetary apocalypse into a disciplined fighting withdrawal, ensuring that while the soil was lost, the army remained intact. By coordinating the evacuation of millions before his own disappearance, Creed proved that the Guard's duty outlasted the very world they were sworn to protect. Today, the Cadian shock troops are a fleet-born civilization where new generations are raised and trained in the cold metal hulls of transports moving between war zones. They fold outsiders into their ranks, but the standard remains Cadian. Ursula Creed succeeded her father, Ursarkar, as Lord Castellan following the destruction of Cadia. While her father focused on defense, she led the displaced new Cadians offensively from a fleet-based command. By wearing her father's greatcoat and training a new generation born in space, she serves as the primary symbol of Cadian resilience, proving the culture survives despite the loss of their homeworld. Death Corps of Krieg. They are nicknamed the Death Corps by other Imperial Guard units because they are consistently assigned to and volunteer for the most lethal war zones in the galaxy. Krieg was forged in a 500-year civil war that transformed their hive world into a radioactive wasteland, following Colonel Jurton's Purging, a planetary nuclear strike detonating the planet's entire nuclear arsenal. It consumed Krieg's ecosystem and most of its population. Survivors retreated underground and spent the next 5 centuries retaking the surface trench by trench. This history of heresy birthed a culture of absolute penitence, where soldiers are issued numbers instead of names, seeking to atone for their ancestors' shame through total self-sacrifice. Because of that shame, the Departamento Munitorum extracts over 50 million soldiers per year, the highest possible tithe from Krieg. And to produce that, they use vitae wombs, a technology that mass produces human organisms. Many Magos biologists regard the practice as heresy, but the High Lords of Terra tolerate it because the alternative is losing the supply. Soldiers grown in this way are placed into brutal training immediately after production. Gas masks are standard issue, worn at all times, and their spiked helmets echo the armies of a terrible century on ancient Terra. Troops carry las guns with bayonets and digging tools as primary equipment because in siege warfare, the ability to dig is as important as the ability to shoot. Their most iconic campaign is the Siege of Vrax, documented in the Imperial Armor series. It all started when a rogue cardinal turned a massive fortress world against the Empire, leading to a 17-year-long war. The Death Corps took such heavy losses that any other army would have completely collapsed. Catachan Jungle Fighters. There are no rookies in a Catachan unit as their world is the most lethal death world in the Imperium. The wildlife is carnivorous at every level of the food chain. Children who survive to adulthood are physically superior to any normal human, which is why other guardsmen call them baby Ogrins, usually not to their faces. The Departamento Munitorum imports everything Catachan needs and takes soldiers in return. The regiment's core capability is jungle and ambush warfare. Each Catachan is worth 10 soldiers from any other regiment in their element. As for their weapons, the Catachan Fang measures up to 20 inches of steel, used for combat and for settling disputes. The Night Reaper is shorter, blackened for stealth operations, and occasionally poisoned using compounds from Catachan's own flora. The Devil's Claw is half filled with mercury for swing control, and is so respected by orcs and would trade a chainsword for one. Their preferred heavy weapons are flamers and demolition charges. Colonel Ironhand Strachan commands with a bionic arm that replaced the one a Morale Land Shark took from him. His pain threshold and combat effectiveness are exceptional by any metric the Munitorum applies. Sly Marbo is the regiment's most decorated and least manageable member. He was one of 10 brothers killed fighting the orcs on Ryza. 2 weeks later, one guardsman walked back to base with the orc warboss's head, a single bolt hole between the eyes. He has been awarded the Star of Terra multiple times. Tanith First and Only. The forest world of Tanith met its tragic end on the very night its regiments were established, when a Chaos Splinter fleet struck the unprotected planet without any warning. Colonel Commissar Ibram Gaunt made the tough call to evacuate instead of trying to defend it. In the end, only about 2,000 survivors managed to escape. What started as 3 planned regiments was condensed into one, which Gaunt aptly named the First and Only, as there would never be another like it. Growing up on Tanith was a unique challenge, as the forests were always shifting and people there needed to have a solid sense of direction. Tanith soldiers simply don't get lost. Even in that kind of terrain, light conditions or weather, they always find their way. Their gear is designed to enhance this natural ability. Camouflage cloaks make them nearly invisible in most environments, while their distinctive straight silver war knives serve as both tools and weapons for close combat. They prefer stealthy sniper operations and covert insertions over head-on assaults, steering clear of the kind of direct confrontations that can drain larger regiments. It was on Blackshard, their first battlefield, that Master Sniper Hlain Mad Larkin dubbed them Gaunt's Ghosts. Tallarn Desert Raiders. Tallarn was a fertile agri-world until the Horus Heresy, when the Iron Warriors virus bombed it from orbit. The Life Eater virus destroyed every living thing on the surface and mutated into something that stayed in the atmosphere for months, making it impossible for infantry to operate outside sealed environments. The Iron Warriors landed expecting a dead planet. The survivors emerged from underground shelters in whatever armored vehicles they could find and fought back. What followed was the largest tank battle in the history of the Imperium. Over 1 million vehicles fought across Tallarn's poisoned surface. The Iron Warriors were eventually ordered off the planet by Horus himself, after Perturabo refused to accept losses that were consuming his legion for a world with no strategic value. The survivors were left with a desert. Tallarn battle doctrine runs on 3 core principles: stealth, swiftness, and the killing blow. Their mobile guerrilla formations strike from unexpected angles and withdraw. Rough Rider squadrons mounted on Mukali, large reptilian desert mounts from Goru Prime, provide long-range reconnaissance and raid enemy supply lines. Their armored regiments favor speed over armor weight for fast penetrating strikes rather than sustained armored pushes. Their preferred special weapons are plasma guns and missile launchers, both suited to hit-and-run engagements. Officers carry the title Dufadar rather than sergeant because the word sergeant derives from a root meaning servant, and the Tallarn are no one's servants. Their alliance with the Biel-Tan craft world Eldari, forged during a later conflict over a buried Chaos relic, remains the only confirmed formal friendship between an Imperial Guard regiment and an Eldari faction. Armageddon Steel Legion. Armageddon has been a battlefield 3 times in the 41st millennium and is still one now. The planet's atmosphere is toxic from millennia of heavy industry, which means Steel Legion troopers wear greatcoats and rebreathers. They grew up in Armageddon's Hive City gangs, where the skills required to stay alive had nothing to do with formal military training. The planet manufactures Chimera armored personnel carriers at a scale that allows virtually every infantry squad to ride into battle. Steel Legion columns advance rapidly across terrain that would stop foot infantry, dismounting only at the objective. This mobility, combined with Lehman Russ tank support and the Hive-ganger toughness of its recruits, makes the Steel Legion effective in ways that slower regiments cannot match. Commissar Sebastian Yarrick is the regiment's icon. During the Second War for Armageddon, he held Hades' Hive for months against Gazkul's main assault with almost no support, using explosives-laden Hive-gangers against the Orcs while waiting for reinforcement. The Blood Angels eventually broke the siege. Yarrick continued hunting Gazkul for decades. Gazkul respected him enough to keep him alive when he finally captured him, which Yarrick used as an opportunity to escape. Valhallan Ice Warriors. While most Astra Militarum regiments treat Orcs as a dangerous and unpredictable threat, Valhallans hold a calculated institutional hatred for them. This was forged during the War of the Subterranean Fire, when an Orc invasion struck a population already struggling to survive underground after a planet-freezing comet impact. The Valhallans had almost no military equipment and almost no food, but they won anyway. Their signature tactic from that war has defined the regiment ever since. Valhallan engineers repurposed industrial ice boring machines by mounting flamers on them, built tunnels beneath Orc positions, and emerged inside enemy formations with fire. The Orcs were driven off a world they should have taken with ease. The regiment has been the Imperium's premier Orc hunting force ever since, specifically deployed where the green tide needs to be broken by troops who understand how Orc assaults develop and where the weaknesses are. Massed flamers shatter Orc charges before they make contact. Mortars break up the mob formations that give Orcs their psychological weight. The Valhallans have been refining this combination for thousands of years. They do not retreat and do not recognize surrender as an option in most tactical contexts. Their cold weather adaptation is so extreme that environments other regiments consider severe ice worlds register to Valhallans as mild. Valhalla itself is a world where life is cheap by design. The subterranean hive cities are densely packed, resources are strictly rationed, and petty crimes are punishable by death because the population cannot afford the alternative. Mordian Iron Guard. Tidally locked in eternal night, Mordian is a world of extreme scarcity where rigid order is the only alternative to total collapse. This environment breeds the Imperium's most precisely drilled infantry. For the Iron Guard, discipline is a survival mechanism. Their most distinctive feature is their toy soldier appearance. Mordians deploy in bright, multicolored dress uniforms to provoke enemies into underestimating them. This deception breaks when they open fire with simultaneous mechanically timed volleys that can shatter charging hordes. They anchor these with grenade launchers and lascannons. However, this discipline makes Mordian units rely heavily on their leaders. If a leader falls, the soldiers will stubbornly follow their last order instead of changing tactics. While this lack of flexibility is a weakness, it shows their belief that disobeying is worse than dying. This mental toughness was famously tested in M42 when the Thousand Sons launched multiple sorceress assaults on Mordian. While nearby worlds fell to madness, the Iron Guard's extreme conditioning allowed them to resist the psychic onslaught and break every incursion. Vostroyan Firstborn. During the Horus Heresy, Vostroya refused the Emperor's demand for soldiers, choosing to focus on their factories instead. To pay for this sin, the planet has spent 10,000 years sending its firstborns to the Imperium as the Firstborn Tithe, where every eldest child from every social class must serve in the Imperial Guard. Vostroyan regiments are unique for their unbroken lineage. Unlike other units that are raised and eventually expended, the Firstborn receive continuous reinforcements, allowing young recruits to serve alongside veterans in a chain of succession stretching back thousands of years. This heritage is reflected in their heirloom war gear. Soldiers carry handcrafted, family-inherited long rifles. These weapons are distinct for their superior range and precision, featuring elongated, finely tooled barrels that outperform standard-issue las guns, often making them more valuable than the soldiers carrying them. Thanks to their close ties with the tech priests, their equipment is expertly maintained. Strategically, they specialize in urban warfare and cold weather operations, a doctrine forged in Vostroya's frozen industrial ruins. This expertise was proven during the defense of Nimbosa, where they held firm against impossible odds. For the Vostroyans, war is a generational debt that they will continue to pay forever. Elysian drop troops. While most Astra Militarum regiments tend to rely on the sheer weight of their armored forces, the Elysians take to the skies as their main battlefield. They cleverly use aerial deployment to completely bypass enemy fortifications and defensive lines. By the time a traditional regiment finally reaches the wire, an Elysian force is already deep inside the objective. Every Elysian Guardsman is trained to leap from Valkyrie transports at high altitudes, using grav chutes that only activate at a specific height. This allows them to slow their descent just enough to survive the fall, though it's not exactly a soft landing. A typical jump from 10,000 feet takes about 2 minutes. Once they hit the ground, the grav chute detaches immediately, giving them full freedom of movement. They rely on guided beacons and localized Vox networks to coordinate landings that might seem chaotic to an outsider, but are actually quite precise. Their gear is specifically designed for airborne operations. The compact Catachan pattern lasgun is made for easy handling during those high-speed descents. The lightweight synthplast carapace offers protection without the added weight that could hinder their drop. Drop Sentinels and Tauros rapid assault vehicles, both light enough to be airlifted by heavy-lift aircraft, provide mobile fire support once they're on the ground. Once behind enemy lines, the Elysians can operate for extended periods without resupply, which demands a level of initiative and independence that the more rigid Astra Militarum structure rarely requires from standard infantry. The Harakoni Warhawks serve as a parallel airborne regiment, employing a similar high-altitude strategy alongside Elysian units in major campaigns like the Taros campaign and operations in the Armageddon sector. The Warhawks often work with attached Tempestus Scions, blending their mass aerial drops with surgical strike capabilities. Militarum Tempestus. Often called stormtroopers or scions, the Militarum Tempestus begin as orphans. Children whose parents died in imperial service are collected by the Schola Progenium and raised in facilities that combine a military academy and a psychological reconstruction program. Many undergo mental processing that erases memories of their previous lives entirely. The trials of compliance determine who continues. The trial tests how candidates follow commands regardless of how dangerous, inhumane, or complex those commands are, and only those who pass become scions. What sets them apart from regular guardsmen is their specialized war gear. They wear carapace armor, which offers much better protection. Their weapon of choice, the Hellgun, can penetrate armor at distances that regular lasguns simply can't. Scions are easily recognized by their red berets and typically deploy via Valkyrie, often during nighttime. Their missions usually involve deep strike assaults behind enemy lines and the elimination of high-value targets. The term Tempestus translates to storm in Latin, while Scion means heir, so the full name of the regiment can be interpreted as Heirs of the Storm, a title that the drill abbots believe perfectly captures the essence of what emerges from the rigorous training at the Schola Progenium. Praetorian Guards. Pretoria is a bustling hive world located near the Bacca naval base, where a wealthy merchant class oversees a massive factory workforce. This strict social structure produces soldiers who view discipline as a core value. With a style reminiscent of Victorian Britain, officers lead with the kind of precision you'd expect on a parade ground, even in the most dangerous war zones of the galaxy. Tactically, they are known for their volley line. Praetorians stand in perfectly aligned ranks under fire, unleashing a precise barrage of las fire. Their vibrant uniforms act as a psychological trap where enemies often mistake their appearance for weakness. Their somewhat outdated gear includes wheeled heavy weapon carriages and traditional cavalry, but these guys don't back down, and a position is only considered lost when every last defender has fallen. Historically, they are marked by the infamous massacre at Big Tooth River in the late M41, where orcs wiped out the regiment. Attilan Rough Riders. Hailing from the vast grasslands of Attila, the Attilan Rough Riders bring ancient steppe traditions to the 41st millennium. As the Astra Militarum's premier shock cavalry, these nomadic clansmen have perfected horsemanship over millennia, proving that a well-placed lance can be as deadly as a tank shell. Their signature weapon is the hunting lance, tipped with specialized explosive charges that detonate on impact. This allows a high momentum charge to punch through heavy armor and fortifications in terrain where tanks would bog down. For follow-up combat, they wield curved monomolecular sabers and bolt pistols. Tactically, they excel at raiding supply lines and hit-and-run harassment. Their mounts are aggressive horses capable of sustaining their riders with small amounts of blood during supplyless operations behind enemy lines. Attilan culture is as rugged as their warfare. Riders bear deep facial scarification and intentionally avoid bathing, a trait other regiments find disgusting. The Savlar Chem-Dogs. At the bottom of the barrel of the Imperial Guard sits the Savlar Chem-Dogs, made up of convicted criminals, addicts, and the desperate souls from the prison moons of the Armageddon sector. They're a ragtag group of scavengers who often pose a bigger threat to their own supply lines than to the enemy. Recruited from the deadly mining colony of Savlar, where the death rate is so high, these soldiers are given the chance to keep whatever they loot and a one-way ticket off their grim homeworld. What sets them apart is their nitrochem inhaler. Before heading into battle, Chem-Dogs huff volatile, pain-numbing stim cocktails that send them into a hyper-aggressive frenzy. These substances are crucial because, without them, they can become dangerously violent towards anyone nearby, which means commissars permit continued use rather than risk it. Their gear is a mix of stolen flak plates and makeshift rebreathers. They're armed with standard loss guns and trench shotguns, along with whatever else they can swipe. Leadership falls to officers known as mercies and a cautious commissaria, whose main job often involves stopping the regiment from raiding their own base's armory. In the cramped, toxic underhives of Armageddon, the Chem-Dogs feel right at home. Their moral flexibility and experience in close-quarters combat make them ideal for meat-grinder war zones and suicide missions. While the Chem-Dogs provide massed bodies for these hellish fronts, the 13th Penal Legion, or the Last Chancers, is the ultimate evolution of this concept, a specialized squad of the Imperium's most dangerous convicts handpicked for high-stakes Black Ops. Minor Guardsmen. Beyond the famous frontline armies, the Astra Militarum draws from thousands of minor regiments that showcase the grim and quirky diversity of the Imperium's distant worlds. These soldiers are all brought together by the Imperial Infantryman's uplifting primer, a manual that seasoned guardsmen often regard with a mix of sarcasm and disdain. You might be curious about how the primitive Canuck skull-takers view this manual. Originating from the fiery death world of Canuck, these feral worlders see the Emperor as a war god in the sky. They're quite the sight, often decked out in lizard skins and adorned with bone trophies. In combat, they act as shock troops, wielding primitive yet effective chain axes and relying on sheer brute strength. Their habit of collecting actual skulls from the battlefield adds a psychological edge to their warfare, although they can be a handful for standard commissars to manage. Next up on the savage ladder are the Brontian Long Knives. Hailing from the hive world of Bront, these soldiers are characterized by their almost cult-like dedication to bladed combat. After a massive uprising that ended in a legendary knife fight, the Long Knives now carry various ritual blades into battle. While they do use standard Lost guns, they've earned a reputation for their terrifying skill in close-quarters urban combat and night raids. Brontians wear their scars as a living biography. While facial scars signal status, marks on the back are a permanent brand of cowardice. As a result, officers are judged by the pristine condition of their backs. Meanwhile, on the planet Japal, citizens are born into debt, turning military service into a literal race for profit. This financial strain built a culture of greedy marksmen who see every missed shot as a personal financial loss. The Japal indentured squadrons don't shy away from high-risk charges out of fear. Rather, they know that a dead soldier can't cash in their paycheck. During their time at Hive Tartarus, the Japal fought together with the suicidal Death Corps, but while Krieg sought glory and death, Japal focused on making a profit. They even made headlines by selling rigged basilisks to orcs for a huge payout, only to blow them up from a distance once the deal was done. Thanks for watching until the end. Click here to check out another video and see you in the next one.